A huge day. So glad to have so many people in the room for this. My name is Summerlin Cothran. I've enjoyed the distinction of running an Oklahoma woman-owned business for the past 22 years, along with having the privilege to represent Independent Women's Voice and Forum as the Senior Vice President for 7 of those years. The work that Independent Women's Voice does to protect women and their families from across the ideological spectrum is unmatched. They exist to help make this a better country by creating opportunities for women and their families, advancing principles such as economic freedom, personal responsibility, and limited government. So it's no surprise that IWV is not standing on the sidelines today. Because when our justice system stops recognizing biological sex, we cannot, as a country, protect and defend the legal rights of women. I'm a proud, lifelong Oklahoman, and I feel blessed to be able to work and raise my family here. But even in our great state, our women and girls are not immune to having their safe spaces violated. Both of my children are in public schools in rural Oklahoma. And just last year, my middle school daughter had a biological male who claimed to be transitioning consistently using the girls' bathroom at her school. It made dozens of girls uncomfortable, and when my daughter decided to be the one to take action and stood up and voiced her concerns to school administrators, she was told that there was nothing they could do and that she could use a different bathroom. Today, Governor Stitt is telling my daughter and the millions of other Oklahoma women and girls that he has their back, that they no longer have to fear for their safety in private female-only spaces. Single-sex spaces are reserved for biological males and for biological females, but not both. I am proud that today my governor is the first in the country to take executive action, firm executive action, and say, not here, not in this state. In Oklahoma, we protect women. Today, not only are Oklahoma women protected in safe spaces, in locker rooms, prisons, and bathrooms, but the definition of what a woman is solidified. For women-owned businesses like mine and for women entrepreneurs throughout the state, without the governor's executive order, that distinction would soon cease to mean anything. So Governor Stitt, thank you. Thank you on behalf of myself, on my middle school daughter, and the 2 million other Oklahoma women that call this state home.
Good morning. Today is a great day for women's rights in Oklahoma. My name is Sharon Byrne, and I am the Executive Director of the Women's Liberation Front, WOLF, a feminist nonprofit fighting to restore, protect, and advance the rights of women and girls. Today, the state of Oklahoma is taking a historic step to protect women and girls, and not just in Oklahoma. Women in prisons, this is a human rights issue, all over the country are being denied female-only correctional facilities. Unthinkable just a few years ago. California's law, which my organization WOLF is suing to overturn, has led to dozens of male sex offenders and murderers being placed in incarcerated facilities with women. It is absolutely obfuscating data on women's crimes versus men's crimes, and has led to sexual assault victims being told that they were harmed by a female penis. Many states have been quietly following California's model, usually adopted behind closed doors, certainly not in public view and public vote and public scrutiny, but based on ideology. States can now look to Oklahoma to not only walk away from that kind of extreme policy, but also to stand up positively, affirming for integrity in our legal system and equal protection under the laws. The Women's Bill of Rights is important because the differences between men and women are material, and women's lives are materially impacted by whether the law recognizes our needs, experiences, and vulnerabilities that are specific to our sex. We at Wolf thank you for being among the first states and for being the first governor, Governor Stitt, thank you, in the United States to recognize that erasing sex in the law will only end up hurting women and girls. Our daughters and all the daughters to come, thank you.
Hi, my name is Dr. Lauren Schwartz, and I'm a board-certified psychiatrist and psychotherapist. And I've been in private practice in Oklahoma for my entire medical career. I was born and raised here. I fell in love with my husband of 21 years. I'm raising my 3 children here, and I am so thankful to be here. First, I want to say thank you to Governor Stitt for your leadership on these complex issues. I'm honored to be here today in support of this executive order that will lay the groundwork for all of us to come together with clear, unambiguous language so that we can effectively discuss ways to best safeguard Oklahomans, specifically those who are most vulnerable. In medicine, it is our duty to take an unwavering approach. Every single patient deserves to be treated with respect, with dignity, with empathy, and with compassion, which includes prioritizing patient safety and lifelong well-being by upholding the highest standards of care. Confusion has been introduced in many medical spaces, and confusion creates opportunity where unnecessary errors, delays, and loss of life can and do occur. One of the many important provisions of this executive order is that it lays the groundwork for ensuring medical records accurately reflect biological sex. The purpose is not to exclude additional charting when needed to accommodate complex experiences and identities of our patients, for example, those intersex or transgender individuals. However, when we unilaterally conflate biological sex with other concepts such as gender, gender identity, sexuality, orientation, and presentation, we create unintended spaces for harm to occur. Reports of harm are increasing, including one published recently in the New England Journal of Medicine detailing the delay in care and near death of an emergency department patient. This patient presented as a man with abdominal pain and high blood pressure and was misclassified in the medical record as biologically male. The patient, however, was biologically female, was pregnant, and was in labor, which was complicated by potentially deadly conditions of preeclampsia, which is pregnancy-related high blood pressure, and a prolapsed umbilical cord. In anticipation of an emergency C-section, the patient was rushed to the OR. Life-saving treatment was provided, but only after hours of delay. In the OR, there was no fetal heart rate. The patient's baby was delivered stillborn. Per the journal's case follow-up, due to the heartbreak of losing a baby, the patient suffered major depression. Patients all over this country are experiencing errors in their electronic charts because of confusing, ideologic-driven data fields, with some of the largest electronic medical record platforms having no field to categorize biological sex. Every Oklahoman should be confident when they seek medical services that the documentation system doesn't unnecessarily introduce errors that could affect their safety or that of a loved one. Fostering open and honest conversations about these issues prioritize patient safety and lifelong mental and physical health becomes imperative for the pursuit of excellence in healthcare, in research and in clinical settings, enabling every patient in our state to thrive.
Good morning. This is a day that I have anticipated for well over 2 months now, so I'm super duper excited to be here. My name is Riley Gaines, and I'm here today as an advisor for Independent Women's Voice, a former collegiate athlete and an advocate for women standing firmly against the erasure of women from our own domain. Without proper protection, threats from across our nation that persistently undermine women's equality and safety will lead to the marginalization of women in America. And I know this because I faced it. Prior to joining Independent Women's Voice, I was a member of the University of Kentucky women's swim and dive team, where I proudly finished my career as a 12-time NCAA All-American, a 5-time SEC champion, the SEC record holder still in the 200 butterfly, making me one of the fastest Americans of all time, and a 2-time Olympic trial qualifier. In March of 2022, my teammates and I and competitors around the country were forced to compete against biological male Leah Thomas. Thomas was allowed to compete in the women's division after competing as a member of the University of Pennsylvania's men's swim team for 3 years, where at best he ranked 462nd in the country. We watched in dismay as Thomas swam to a national title in the 500 freestyle, beating out the most impressive and accomplished female swimmers this world has ever seen, Olympians, American record holders, by body lengths. When I raced Thomas the next day in the 200-yard freestyle, almost impossibly enough, we tied. We ended up going the exact same time down to the 100th of a second. Upon tying, we went behind the awards podium where the NCAA official looked at both of us and said, "Great job, but you guys tied. And we only have one trophy, so we're going to give this trophy to Leah. Riley, you have to go home empty-handed." And when I asked why, they told me it's because they were advised when pictures were being taken, Thomas had to have the trophy. It was then that I realized the NCAA intentionally and explicitly discriminated on the basis of sex. But that's not all. In addition to being forced to give up our awards and our titles and our opportunities and our scholarships, we as female swimmers were forced to share the locker room with Thomas. A 6'4", Wikipedia will tell you he's 6'1". Wikipedia is lying. A 6'4", 22-year-old biological man equipped with and exposing male genitalia, inches away from where we were undressing. And we were not forewarned. We were not asked for our consent. We did not give our consent. Not so long ago, a decision by a university to allow such discriminatory behavior would have been understood as an obvious violation of Title IX, the 1972 federal civil rights law that prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex in education, including college athletics. But today, unelected bureaucrats want to redefine sex and equate it to gender and gender identity. Under this rewording, colleges and universities would be required to allow anyone who identifies as a woman to compete in women's sports and to dress in female changing spaces, and live in dorm rooms with women, and join sororities, and take our scholarships. This is literally the opposite of what Title IX was enacted to do. Thankfully, states like Oklahoma and leaders like Governor Stitt have taken decisive action to safeguard, revitalize, and protect women's sports and spaces. Unfortunately, the intrusion of men in women's spaces has already gone much further than just sports, and the radical effort to create a sexless society must be stopped. Imagine if all spaces were co-ed. Co-ed prisons, where women are at a substantially greater risk of abuse, co-ed shelters and rape crisis centers, co-ed locker rooms where minor girls would be changing with adult men, co-ed dorms, and of course, the end of sororities altogether. It's hard to imagine, but yet it's not, because we're living it. Every day I learn of new women and girls who have fallen victim to the extreme agenda to erase women, and it's all gone too far. Thankfully, Oklahoma women don't need to imagine a society where sex-based protections don't exist. And today I cannot be more honored to stand beside such an incredible group of women and Governor Stitt, who just made history, as you know, by becoming the first governor in the nation to take decisive action to stand up for women and our representation. Thanks to Governor Stitt's executive order to implement the Women's Bill of Rights in Oklahoma, nearly 2 million Oklahoma women's private spaces and opportunities are now protected. And equally as important, his executive order has put a definition on common sex-based words such as woman and man. I never would have imagined that we needed a law to do that. But now when these words are used in Oklahoma law, they will have a meaning, so everyone is speaking common language that is not up for interpretation or redefinition. Governor Stitt's leadership is an example for his colleagues and other states to follow. Rather than sitting idly by, taking the horrible assault on women seriously, stand up and take action to define sex-based words and protect women's privacy and opportunities by implementing the Women's Bill of Rights in your state. Thank you, Governor, once again for leading the way in the fight for women's equality, privacy, respect, safety, and opportunities.
Man, I am a huge fan of Riley. Isn't she amazing? She's fantastic. You know, for her to stand up and what she went through as a college athlete in the face of, all the leaders and the people at the NCAA and for her voice. And now she's got this national platform, and she is speaking for all of us, for common sense. And so I just want to thank everybody that's in the room today for your support. And Summerlin Cawthorn, thank you for being here, and Sharon Byrne and Dr. Schwartz, thank you for your words. I'm so excited to be here and sign this today. And thank you to the Independent Women's Voice for the work your team has done leading up to today. I'm thrilled to gather and really safeguard the God-given rights of women all across Oklahoma. It is such an honor to be the first governor to sign an executive order to establish a woman's Bill of Rights. In 1972, Congress enacted what we know as Title IX. It prohibited sex discrimination across our educational institutions. Now, over 50 years later, there are some that don't want to recognize the important distinction of biological womanhood. Today, we're taking a stand against this out-of-control gender ideology that is eroding the very foundation of our society. And we are going to be safeguarding the very essence of what it means to be a woman. I'm doing this for my wife of 25 years, the greatest First Lady in state history, and she's up here with us. I got to recognize Sarah Stitt. I'm doing this for my 3 daughters. I have a 22-year-old daughter, a 17-year-old daughter, and a 15-year-old daughter. I'm doing this for every single lady and woman and little girl all across the state of Oklahoma. Oklahomans are fed up with attempts to confuse the word woman and turn it into some kind of ambiguous, perverted definition that harms our real women. Oklahomans are like, Governor, enough is enough. This is crazy. Oklahomans know what a woman is. And by signing the Women's Bill of Rights into law, we're recognizing women's rights are endowed by our Creator. As many of you know, we've been fighting this fight for a while. Our efforts are relentless. I signed, I think it was last year or the year before, the Save Women in Sports Bill, which is just basically ensures fairness in women athletics. We pulled funding from the hospitals performing sexual reassignment surgeries on our minors. And then I was so excited. Thank you for some of the legislature for being here today. We put that into law. We made sure that in our schools, boys use boys' bathrooms and girls are going to use girls' bathrooms. And if any of you were governor and you had to take the phone calls from the moms and the dads that called me and said, Governor, my 5th grader is so scared to go to the bathroom right now for what's happening. So we're glad to be able to get this common sense done. And today I will proudly put my signature on the Women's Bill of Rights executive order to extend our protection of women at the state level. Today we take another step to preserve the integrity of women's spaces and opportunities. Okay? We are making sure that women's spaces are safe for women. No men are going to go into women's prisons in the state of Oklahoma. No men in women's domestic shelters in the state of Oklahoma. No men in women's locker rooms. No men in women's bathrooms. No men in women's sports. It's now my honor to sign this executive order, and then we'll open it up to some questions to our great panelists. Not all of them. It's harder than you think to stop your signature midway through. So. Okay, well, yeah, come on in here. Okay, we probably have time for a few questions. You'll always have some crazy groups that'll come in and try to sue on common sense legislation or executive orders. So we'll be prepared for it. Somebody want to speak to that?
Amy, do you want to speak to that? Paycheck Fairness Act.
Well, I mean, I'll say that, absolutely, we need to make sure that pay is fair for the job done. It's regardless if you're man or woman. The government doesn't, I don't like when the government gets involved in private businesses, tells people what you should pay. That's a free market principle. But I think most companies that I know, especially after a certain size, will have different levels, and they do a really good job of trying to make sure that based on the level that you're at, regardless of race or sex, that you're going to get the same earnings.